What's going on, y'all? The intro is going to be quick today because I wanted to do a video that I edited with pop-ups in it. So hopefully you like this video just as much or the same as other ones. Let me know in the comment section. 3 stories today. The first one is how Trump outsmarted Ben Shapiro, Dan Crenshaw, and his Democratic haters on the Trump tariff finesse or 4D chess or deal, art of the deal, some would say. We're going to talk about that. This is not the only time that Donald Trump outsmarted these Republicans that always think they one-upped him. It seems like that happens a lot. We're going to talk about that. Second story I want to talk about is New York Times wrote an article that said the making of YouTube radicals, where they indirectly, or I would say pretty much directly, blamed dozens of regular right-wing YouTubers and also even central and left-wing YouTubers for radicalizing the right-wing or the alt-right and causing chaos. This is coming from New York Times, who of course had to apologize for their coverage on the Iraq War, which led to God knows how many millions of people murdered, displaced, and these non-stop regime change wars in the Middle East, thanks to publications like the New York Times, who falsely reported on false evidence and false intelligence that they would never allow you to question. So they didn't question it, made a huge mistake, and apologized for it. But now that 7 years later, not only do they pretty much do the exact same thing, but now they're even blaming, which really ticked me off this morning, but I'm going to be as calm about it as possible, started even blaming like central left-wing news analysts and calling them right-wing. The mainstream media, and especially New York Times, are getting ridiculous. And the third story of the day, very interesting, is the Koch brothers. If you guys don't know the Koch brothers, they've been known as the biggest Republican donors. When the right wing says George Soros is funding the left wing often says Koch brothers are funding the right. But it looks like the Koch brothers don't like Donald Trump very much, and they're floating the idea of backing Democrats in the new election, or in the new elections, whether it be Congress or the Trump election, because Trump's not doing what they want him to do. So not that long ago, Trump said that he was going to put tariffs on Mexico to try to pressure them into finally doing something about immigration and other stuff that they're not helping us with, but mainly immigration. And everybody was in an uproar. Of course, the media, anti-Trump or Democrat liberal media, was saying, oh my God, this is so terrible, it's horrible, it's never gonna work, it's gonna cost the American taxpayers so much money, blah, 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 there's gonna be avocado shortages, it's gonna cost 5 cents more at Chipotle. Oh my God, 5 cents. But I get it, nobody needs an extra tax. And he was also joined, or they were also joined, by other haters, not just on the left wing, but Dan Crenshaw and Ben Shapiro. I'm going to read a Dan Crenshaw tweet from May 31st, 2019. Tariffs on Mexico won't fix this immigration mess. Asylum reform will. Imagine a world where Dems actually wanted to secure the border. What a great world that would be, Dan. And we didn't use tariffs that could hurt our economy and our relationships. Let's just do both of those things. Easy. Solved. Well, easy, solved, wrong, Dan Crenshaw. Stay in your lane. I appreciate your perspective and your strong, assertion there, but it turns out that Donald Trump once again outsmarted you and Ben Shapiro. We'll read Ben Shapiro's tweet. He retweeted this, Washington Post. U.S. and Mexico close to a deal to avoid tariffs. Mexico has proposed sending 6,000 troops to its southern border with Guatemala and what sounds like a modified version of a safe third country agreement. Unclear how close or if it will satisfy Trump. So that's exactly what Trump wanted. He got exactly that without having to do anything except for basically threaten tariffs. And Ben Shapiro's response was, holy crap. If true, Trump was 100% right and I was 100% wrong. Good on him. So basically, Dan Crenshaw and Ben Shapiro put a lot of pressure or criticism on Trump, and Trump ended up being right. So what Trump did was he threatened tariffs. He understands that Mexico needs the United States. And this is something I need to remind people that Donald Trump has been saying since the 70s, 80s, 90s. You could watch interviews of him on Oprah, Larry King. He's been all over the place. He's even taken out a full-page ad in the newspaper to talk about why is the United States not getting better deals out of all the stuff we're doing, whether it's military. He says we're protecting all these countries, which is true. We're doing it for free. The world runs based on money and financial agreements and such, and we're out there protecting the entire world, and a lot of these countries are very wealthy. This is what Trump always said, and they're not giving us any deals. So when it came to Mexico, he kind of had that same philosophy or ideology that he's had for decades now. And he said, listen, Mexico needs us just as much as maybe we need them, but he has the ability to hurt Mexico a lot more than Mexico could hurt us economically. So he said, listen, I'm going to put these tariffs there. Why did he do that? They weren't listening for God knows how long. Trump said, listen, I don't want illegal immigration. I don't want people coming from South and Central America through Mexico here. They're coming in these crazy funded caravans of 5,000, 6,000. There's reports 10, 20, 30, 40. There's 6, 7 caravans. And then there's all sorts of diseases. And then they say, no, it's not an invasion. But I mean, 5,000 people coming simultaneously illegally. This is the president's job. You don't have to agree with it, but he's the president of the United States. He's supposed to uphold the law and protect our country. He's not the cool friend who says, no, you could come in and, you can do it for free, but there's millions of people waiting from the Middle East and India trying to do it legally, but you can cut the line. It's not President Trump's job to do that, and to be quite honest, it's not really anyone's job to do that. You could try to help or find a way to make it all work, asylum or such, but to just lobby for illegal immigration like the mainstream media has done and tell people to basically come here and we'll give you millions of dollars of Facebook, GoFundMe, lawyer fees, and we'll protect you and make everyone else look bad. It's awful. But that was Trump's whole philosophy there was, listen, I know that this is going to talk to him. It's like a friend who's taking advantage of you money-wise, and then you cut off the gravy train and say, no more money, this is until you do this. And then all of a sudden they listen because they have incentive to listen. So it's a very smart move, and it worked clearly that he said, okay, you're not going to listen to me now when I talk. What if I take action? And that's what Trump has done very well. A lot of politicians just talk. They're professional talkers and professional finessers. Trump's the opposite, rough around the edges, but he knows action and he knows business. Maybe more than anybody. You could say anything you want about him, but he's been doing deals all over the country and all over the world for decades. He wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. He thinks of it like an art form. So no offense to Dan Crenshaw. I think you have some really good policies. I support you a lot on my channel, and I always promote you, and I think I've helped make a lot of people like you. But to constantly critique Trump on this stuff, I love critique. Trust me, I like to watch progressives who critique Trump and even Republicans or right-wingers who critique Trump. But it does seem to me like the Dan Crenshaws and the Ben Shapiros, when they do critique Trump, to me personally, as much as, I don't dislike both of them, I find that their critiques are usually wrong. Like, they're like, Trump, start another war in Syria. How dare you draw the troops out? Trump, no, you're going to do that. It's like, no, they always seem to disagree with Trump on the wrong things. It's like, Dan Crenshaw said, tariffs on Mexico won't fix this immigration mess. You're wrong. I mean, of course, there's other things that need to fix it, but he accomplished more than anyone else has, or probably more than Dan Crenshaw can, by doing, a deal that Dan Crenshaw and Ben Shapiro don't think we're right. But that's why Trump's the president, and that's why you're not president. I'm not saying you can't critique or disagree, but I'll vote for Donald Trump 20 times out of 20 times before I ever vote for Dan Crenshaw or Ben Shapiro for president, because I don't like them as much and I don't agree with them as much. And I just wanted to point that out, because I'm always saying, the left-wing media and the Democrats, of course they have become obstructionists. They just want to disagree with them. It does seem to me like they don't like this country that much. It seems that it's not even that they disagree with Trump, but it just seems like the hate in their heart for certain ethnicities and races and religions and our own country outweighs the love for other people. I can tell when people love the world and love everyone, but it seems like they say that, and then their actions to me just seem very anti-Trump, anti-conservative, and anti-America. But it's nice to see Trump winning again, and he also got, I posted this earlier, but I'll show it again on video. Reuters reported, and others, that Trump got Mexico not only to send troops to the border to stop the immigration that they wouldn't before they had that economic threat, but also they froze the bank accounts of many human traffickers. And let's not forget the rape rates, and this is even in liberal news organizations, 80%. I don't know if that's too high or too low. People might say, no, Emily, those aren't official numbers, but the study was official. It wasn't just Huffington Post. They're just reporting on a more official report. However, it's very obvious that human trafficking is real, child trafficking is real, and there is incentive to bring children and young kids to the border, because then you get special treatment when you come to America, thanks to a lot of these goofy laws that were intended to be well, but now what they're doing is incentivizing human and child trafficking. Trump has been very strong on human trafficking, and that's something that the media never wants to cover, which is very sad and creepy. Especially recently, there's been a liberal anti-Trump Ars Technica writer, Dr. Pizza, who got, I guess he's getting charged with some sort of, I don't want to misquote it, you're going to have to look it up, but soliciting like sexual stuff with like 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds, disgusting stuff. So it's like the liberal media never wants to talk about human and child trafficking. They're constantly promoting stuff like Vice Canada, which I would say is sexualization of children. And then all of a sudden, some of their writers are getting, pinged for sexual assault, and then they act like human and child trafficking doesn't exist. I don't know that that's all a coincidence, but maybe it's just, ego and pride and too much politics and ignoring stuff. But another great thing that Trump did at the border, not only got them to deal with their southern border, or at least they claim to, but he's getting human trafficking bank accounts frozen, which affects millions of people worldwide and is a huge problem that for some reason people never want to address. So congratulations, Donald Trump, once again for outsmarting all of the Democrat haters who are still, of course, not satisfied. Outsmarting Ben Shapiro, as I think Donald Trump does dozens of times. Every time Ben Shapiro is like, I disagree with that, I find that Ben Shapiro, and I'm not trying to be a big critic because I know a lot of people, we have mutual fans, and that's awesome. But I find that Ben says facts don't care about your feelings, but when it comes to Trump, he's emotional, and he's always jabbing at Trump just to do it. Like it's always like an emotional, childish joke, or when it's a policy thing like Syria or these tariffs, I find that Ben's almost always wrong when he skews from Trump. And I'm not saying to not disagree, to think that Trump is perfect and not challenge him at all, but I just find that the Ben Shapiro and Dan Crenshaw types, when they do, I don't find them very bright or honest or more impressive than Trump. I find them least impressive. And that's cool. We need diversity on the right wing. But congratulations, Trump, for taking another win over both sides and both parties again, which is why you're a legend, which is why people voted for you. And we're going to get into that. Maybe I'll do that as the second story now since it flows a little better. Another reason people like you, among others, is you don't really fit into the narrative or both parties. And this news came out, I was not surprised, but a lot of people will be, that the Koch network, the Koch brothers, float ideas of backing Democrats in the new election. They say that, they used to be Republican or right-wing, or they at least pretended to be. They probably were just phony, puppeteers or puppeters like, your McCains and Romneys and others. But they're unhappy with a lot of things Trump is doing, such as strong borders, immigration, and they claim to love dreamers. I'm not sure. Maybe they really do. They're pro-dreamers. I don't know if that's. I buy it, but they could be. I'm not saying they're not. They're very bothered by Trump's direction that he's taking the Republican Party, which is away from the two-party trap. In some ways he's not, but in many ways he is. And they're like, oh well, we might need to go Democrat. I'll read some more from that article in a second. But I want to read Trump's tweets. These were months ago, and I pointed these out to a lot of my progressive friends because they're always blaming me or Dave Rubin or Donald Trump of getting funded by the Koch brothers. That's the big talking point on the right wing. They say everybody's funded by George Soros, except a lot of people, I do believe, are. And George Soros has his hands all over the world. This is not a conspiracy theory or anti-Semitism. This is a fact. I mean, you could look at mainstream organizations or mainstream media and see how many countries that George Soros is involved in and how many countries that he's banned from. You can do that research on your own. But the left wing would say, oh, you say George Soros? We say Koch brothers. And this is a Donald Trump tweet against the Koch brothers. I love it. The globalist Koch brothers, who have become a total joke in real Republican circles, are against strong borders and powerful trade. I never sought their support because I don't need their money or bad ideas. They love my tax and regulation cuts, judicial picks, and more. I made them richer. Their network is highly overrated. I have beaten them at every turn. They want to protect their companies outside the U.S. from being taxed. I'm for America first and the American worker, a puppet for no one. Two nice guys with bad ideas. Make America great again. So this is Trump in July 31st, 2018, almost a year ago now. telling people I'm not a puppet to the Koch brothers. I don't want their bad ideas. They're nice guys, but I disagree with them in some ways, and I agree with them in some ways. But I don't want their money, and it's awesome. So the Koch brothers coming out now, I know a lot of people will be stunned, like, but I saw this writing on the wall for a year now, because Trump was like, listen, the Koch brothers don't agree with my immigration policy. They're weak on trade and border, and I'm not. So it's coming out in Politico and mainstream organizations now that the Koch network is floating backing Democrats. They don't want to back Republicans anymore because Trump has taken the Republican Party away from what the traditional Republican Party was, which is what Democrats and Republicans didn't like. So once again, Trump winning. I mean, even at his worst, I understand there's certain things that he does that I scratch my head about and I don't agree with, and I do wish he was more critical and observant of Saudi Arabia and other of our allies, even Israel and certain connections there. I wish I'm not saying severed ties completely, but I wish he would observe what's going on a little bit more and really question certain things. In some cases he has, in others he hasn't. And once again, this is not me critiquing or hating, but it's like, the point I'm trying to get to is, even for the things that I might be critical of Trump on or wish maybe he did more a little bit, he wins 10,000 times for every time that he doesn't, or that I disagree or maybe think that he's a little weak on. It's like every week is something, every day is something. I've never thought about, I don't remember this for any other politician or president where every single day they were executing something that's common sense or breaking away from old people, calling people puppets, using the term military-industrial complex, freezing the bank accounts of human traffickers, getting people to do stuff without even basically raising a finger, saying, tariffs, finger down, over. He didn't even have to really do anything. The dude is ambitious. The dude really loves America. The dude isn't a politician. He's not tied to anybody that I do think that Trump, what's different about Trump, because there are critiques of his, even on the right, where they say that Trump is very tight with Sheldon Adelson. And this is something that you won't hear on the right wing or the left wing a lot, which is interesting because if you look up Sheldon Adelson, his influence and his net worth, it's actually more than the Koch brothers and George Soros. And a lot of people will be like, what? He's wealthier, has more power and money than George Soros? I don't know if he's as involved worldwide as Soros, and that's maybe debatable for who gets involved in what, but net worth way higher, and Trump does seem to be pretty tight with him. And I know that there's a lot of critiques there where people say that Trump is, sold out or a puppet of Israel. And my thought about it is just a little bit different, where, like I said, with Saudi Arabia and Israel and even others, I do wish Trump would be a little bit more critical and maybe observant and question things. But I think the difference between Trump and other politicians is they're literal puppets, where there's no movement, there's no action, there's no disagreements. You know exactly what they're going to do. They're not going to stray from that line. And Trump picks his allies, I think, independently. I don't think he did it because Sheldon Adelson gave him all this money and Trump's like, oh, I need this money. Trump doesn't need anybody's money. If he does any sort of appeasing of somebody like an Adelson or an Israel or a Saudi Arabia, he's doing it based on his idea of what's right. Whether you agree that he's right or not, I personally, and you can disagree with even me, I don't see it as him being like, oh, I'm bent over to these countries. I think he thinks, I'm going to sell weapons to them, I'm going to make money, they're going to fight Iran's proxy war in Yemen, and I know that's had a huge, horrible effect on the people in Yemen. And I've tried to weigh out both sides, because the one side says there's a genocide in Yemen and Saudi Arabia is just bombing the crap out of them for no reason. The counter argument to that I've heard is, well, Iran and terrorist organizations are in Yemen, and that that Trump is funding Saudi Arabia to basically fight Iran in Yemen. That's the counter argument. And my thought is, I do think Iran is probably places, and I do think there's a bigger story. But like I said, when it comes to 9/11, for instance, the towers fell, awful, terrible day. They said it was Al Qaeda, and then we went to all these other countries, and then we find out years later that most of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. I have friends in Saudi Arabia that I went to college with, great people. I have love for some Saudi Arabian people, but that's the type of thing where no one talks about that. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist in the sense of saying they did it, but if something happens, we find out that we go to these countries that have nothing to do with Al Qaeda, even in a lot of ways, or there's not really even Al Qaeda presence in places like Libya. I don't know how close that was to the Twin Tower attacks per se. And then you find out that the attackers come from Saudi Arabia, and there's not really a lot of effort to try to figure out why. I'm not saying it's Saudi Arabia themselves' fault, but you listen to people like Tulsi Gabbard, and she says the Wahhabist ideology, which is the most dangerous Islamic ideology, is being funded by, you know, Saudi Arabia and other countries. And I've heard that from people in Syria and others that are saying that it's not just the United States doing stuff. Like they're saying United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, you know, France, UK. They're all kind of playing this game and doing these proxy wars to the point where no one knows what's going on anymore. So I do wish Trump did a little more of that, and you know, put an eye on that. However, I still think he's done enough. And like with this, I mean, a president that will just call out the Koch brothers, will call out the left wing, will skew from the narrative. And the point about saying all that stuff I just said is when he does ally with people like Israel and Saudi Arabia, I don't think it's part of this grandiose scheme for Trump. I think he's kind of just winging it in many ways. He's like, all right, I'll give you the weapons. We'll do that there. With Israel, he's like, you know, we're linked and you got power. We're going to do that. But I do, those are places that I question. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, what's going on there? Why are we really here? Because people like I said in my last thing about Shapiro and Crenshaw, one thing I do like them on a lot of domestic policy, but I don't like their foreign policy. They're always going against Trump and saying, oh, he needs to do this and that in Syria. And I'm like, what? Guys, how does that benefit the United States? I mean, all the data and research I've done into what we were doing in Syria before Trump was awful. We were making it worse. Terrorists, you know, they were expanding. And then even Trump now, I do have to say, he's using terminology like the mainstream media. He's saying Assad's being a butcher in the top corner of Syria. And even right-wingers like Jack Posobiec were like, Trump, that's where the terrorists are. You basically help Syria get rid of all their terrorists except for that one area. So if Russia or Iran or Syria is bombing that region, I get that you don't want them to do certain things, but that region still has terrorist groups, and they have the right, at least Syria does, to get them out of their country. So those are places that I question Trump, and I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? You sound like CNN right now. But I am pumped that the Koch brothers are not supporting him and backing Democrats. That's a funny little narrative shifter. Now they say, the Koch brothers, you know, the left wing will say that, and they'll be like, wait, oh, the Koch brothers don't like Trump anymore? And Trump called them globalists, and he said that they're highly overrated. Pretty hilarious. Third and final story of the day I want to talk about